Hi guys, welcome back to the inventory video series. This is video 3. In the previous videos we created our actual visual layout for the inventory and the slot. This video is going to have a look at setting up the actual data side of the inventory itself. So we're going to have a look at setting up some data assets. We're going to start having a look at setting up some blueprints. And yeah, we'll kind of go through it step by step. So the first thing that we're going to do is inside the inventory folder, we're going to right click, go to blueprints, and we're going to create an enumeration asset. So an enumeration asset is basically just a list of values that you can use in a list format. Now they're great for things like data validation, because you can basically compare them to other inputs, and they're great basically just for having things like drop-down lists to configure other assets. So I've just created two new enumerators. The first one I'm just going to call health pack, and the second one I'm just going to call ammo pack, because I've got a health pack and an ammo pack. Just going to save that off and then close that down. The next thing to create, if we right click and go to blueprints, we're going to create a structure. Now what a structure is an asset that includes a range of variables. Think of it as being, you can have a variable that is made up of other variables. This structure is going to be our item data structure. So every pickup that you can get in the game will have a range of properties that can be assigned to it inside the item data structure. So if we double click inside here, you can see that we've already got one made for us. This member variable is a boolean. The top part is where you actually specify the variables you want. The bottom part is where you can see the default values, or set the default values. So we're going to start by just adding in a new variable called pickup type, and that's going to be of type pickup type, the enumerator that you just created before. We're going to add another new variable, which is going to be the pickup class, and this is going to be of type actor, but we're going to use the class reference, and that's important to have that set up. It's going to come back in very useful for when we start implementing the actual functionality of the objects we've picked up. So we're going to add a couple more variables. We're going to have a pickup name, which will be of type text. We're going to have pickup action text, which will display in the menus we've just created, which is also text. We're going to have a pickup image, which will be the icon, which will go inside the inventory itself. So let's make that a texture 2D. And we're going to need a variable to handle whether or not the item can stack or not. That's just going to be a boolean. So can it stack, yes or no? We're going to have another variable to handle the quantity. So how much do we actually have of this type of object? So that's just going to be an integer. And the final variable, amount to use, which will also be an integer. Okay, so once that's all done, we can just save that off, just close that window, and that's our item data structure set up. The first thing to do is then to create the actual inventory itself. Now there's a couple of different schools of thoughts about where the inventory can be saved. Some people like to save it on the player, some like to save it in a dedicated inventory actor in the level. Both of those actors would be subject to being wiped when you switch between levels. Whenever an object passes between levels, all of the begin play functions, events are rerun, and any stored data is wiped. With this in mind, we're going to actually use a specific blueprint called a game instance. Now, a game instance is a high-level manager. which can be used to store data persistently across a range of levels. So I've just called my game instance. Because we're creating our own, we have to set the game instance in the maps and modes in the project settings. So go up to settings on the top bar into project settings and just have a look under maps and modes. What you'll want to have is your game instance class set to the name of the game instance that you've set. Okay, usually it's set to game instance, but we want ours to be whatever you've called yours. So I've set mine to my game instance. Just close out of that, and that is good to go. So just double click on the game instance to open it up. You'll see that it just looks like a typical blueprint, although we don't have a construction script, we don't have a viewport. We're not actually going to put any code in the event graph itself. We're just going to be using this to dump some data. So if you have a look on the variables on the left hand side, we're going to create a new variable. We're going to call it inventory, and make sure that it is of type item data. So it should show up as a little blue capsule. Now at the minute this is just a singular variable. We want to make sure that this is an array. So our inventory, just to be clear, is not going to be a collection of actual objects. The inventory is just going to be a collection of data structures, which are what the item data asset is. So to create it into an array, just right click on the little capsule and that will turn it into an array. It'll look like a little grid of squares. Compile and save, and you can close the game instance off. That's the game instance done with for now. So we're going to have a look at setting up our pickups. Now the way that this is going to work is that we will have one blueprint which we can use as a template throughout all of the levels, and we can specify what type of pickup it is through how the item data is configured. So it'll be the same blueprint all the way through all of your levels. We'll then create some specialized blueprints, some individual blueprints, which will implement the functionality of whatever type of blueprint it is. So we're going to start by, in your pickups folder, just right click and create a blueprint class. Just make sure that you use an actor, and we're just going to call this one pickup underscore BP. We're also going to create a couple more blueprints. I'm just going to create two. The first one is going to be the health pickup BP, and the second one is going to be the ammo pickup BP. So these two will have specialized code. The pickup blueprint itself, if we just double click to open it, is not actually going to have any code on the event graph. What we're going to have to add, firstly, is a static mesh. So we're going to have a mesh which will handle what this pickup is going to look like. We're not going to set it, but we're just going to add it in. We're also going to add some collision. So add a sphere collider, and just make sure it's a bit bigger. So use the sphere radius just to make it a little bit bigger. We're not going to use the radius with a collision as the pickup trigger. We're actually going to add some code onto the first person character to facilitate that. This collision is just for things like a proximity check if you want to have some text that appears over the top of the object. So we can compile that one for now, and then we can start adding in some variables. So the first variable that we're going to add is our item data. So just create a new variable, call it item data, and just make sure that the type you're using is item data. We're then going to create another variable. We're going to call this one pickup type, and this is going to be of your enumerator type. So if you type in pickup, and make sure you're using the enumerator. This is what we're going to use to switch the pickup between different types. So make sure that you make it public by pressing the little I symbol just to the right. This will allow you to create instance specific modifications to that variable's value. The next set of variables are going to be pretty much the same as what you set up in the inventory struct. So it might be useful just to open up the item data structure, just have it over on one side, and we're just going to create the same variables here again. So we'll start with the pickup class. Just make sure that that is of type actor and make sure that it is a class reference. Create another variable. This is going to be the pickup name, which should be of type text. Another variable, pickup action text. Another variable, pickup image. Make sure that one is a texture 2D. Make sure it's an object reference. Can stack. Make sure that is a Boolean. Another variable, quantity. Make sure that is an integer. And the final one, amount to use, and make sure that's also an integer. The final variable that we're going to use that isn't a part of the data structure is going to be another integer, which we'll call amount to add, which is what we'll use to specify how many we're going to add to the inventory. So once that's done, you can close the item data structure and just maximize the pickup blueprint again. Just make sure you compile and save. So what we're going to do next is we're going to have a look at the construction script. The construction script is a graph that gets executed when new objects are added. So whatever gets programmed in here is how the object will be created within the level at runtime. So we're going to use a switch case setup by switching on pickup type. So make sure you click and drag pickup type from the left, hold down Control to get, and from the pickup type we're just going to type in switch. And you can see that we've got the two types of pickup that we specified earlier in the enumeration asset. We're going to start with the health pack and then we'll have a look at setting up the ammo pack afterwards. So from health pack, click and drag, and we're going to firstly set static mesh. This is going to get a reference to the static mesh which is a part of this pickup. We're going to set the mesh asset to be the health pack asset. Next, with those two nodes selected, we're going to right click and we're going to collapse nodes. And we're going to call this new collapse graph set health pack. Now the reason we're doing this is that firstly it will keep things nice and tidy. Secondly, once we've configured the health pack, we can simply copy paste this collapse graph and set it up appropriately for the ammo pack. So let's double click inside, and all we're going to do is set each of the individual variables to the correct types. Now because we have more than one input here, we're going to have to use a sequence node. So a sequence node allows you to create a range of executions that execute one after the other. Just make sure as well that we also have an output on the output node. This is going to be called then, and it's going to be of type exec. Okay, so the pickup class for the health pack is going to be the health pack pickup. The pickup name is what displays inside the inventory. So this is just simply going to be health pack. The pickup action text is what is going to be displayed inside the inventory's item menu. So this is going to be heal me. Pickup image will have the icon, so health pack icon. The can stack. For our health pack, we're going to leave as false because I don't want the health pack to stack up. For the quantity, we're going to leave this as 0. All items should start with a 0 quantity. And last but not least, the amount to use. Now, any item that isn't stackable by nature will be 1 for under the amount to use. So I'm just going to set 1 in there. We're going to compile and jump back to the construction script. So to create the ammo pack, all I need to do now is select the set health pack collapse graph, press Ctrl W to duplicate it, and link it up to the ammo pack. Just make sure that we rename it so that it is easy to tell what it is. So set ammo pack. Now it's just going to be a quick matter of adjusting the each of the variables the way that they should be set up. Ammo pack. That's going to say reload. The pickup image will be the ammo icon. Ammo can stack, so we'll set the can stack. Quantity is going to be set to 0, and each of my ammo packs is going to add 20 ammunition. So compile that again, jump back to the construction script, and we've now got our 2 collapse graphs. So to actually set the item data for this pickup, we're going to use our item data variable. We're going to click and drag and hold down Alt on the keyboard, and we're going to set the item data. Now, to be able to access all of the properties, we'll simply right click on the item data pin and split the struct pin. So we should get all of the individual pieces of information there. So firstly, start by hooking up the execution pin, and then it's just going to be a matter of applying the correct variable to the correct struct pin. So pickup name, pickup action text, pickup image, can stack, quantity, and amount to use. Let's just compile that, and to give this a little test, let's try adding some of our pickups into the level. So if we click and drag the pickup out into the level, you'll see by default it loads up the health pack mesh. If we change the default type over on the right hand side to ammo pack, you'll see that it changes the mesh appropriately. We can't see any of the information, but because of the way we've set this up in the construction script, we know that it is changing the item data appropriately. So we'll wrap that one up there. In the next video, we'll have a look at how we can start getting pickup information into the inventory itself.